Welcome to World War II Online Tutorial. Making successful RDP raids during campaigns can help your side stay ahead of the other, whether it be Axis against the Allies or Allies against the Axis. By bombing the other's factories, you can delay them coming into the tier with the amount of equipment and or when the equipment will then appear. Once you've set up your waypoints, note that if you stay within 10 kilometers of your own towns over your own territory, the AWS will not light up for your enemy. Whether you're Allied or Axis, it's the same. Once your 10-kilometer ring is over enemy territory or touching enemy towns, then the AWS will begin to show. Since this is not a true radar, but listening posts, observations, people on the ground, looking up and listening to the air, then it's essentially to simulate that there is a slight delay in once you've entered a grid before it will show up for your enemy. For example, if you note my 10-kilometer ring, as long as I'm touching any of these towns along this area, right in here, or even if I'm out over the ocean, as long as that 10-kilometer ring is touching these coastal towns, I'm not going to show up on the enemy AWS. But once I've left that and get out over the ocean and no longer touching any of these towns, then the AWS will show that I'm in a particular grid. Setting up your waypoints for the factories, go to the factory, zoom in here, click on the middle of the three long slender buildings at the very tip. You'll see that is the center of that particular factory square, and then that gives you a better chance of getting a bomb inside that square if you use the center point as your waypoint. Labeling, make sure that you use the name of the factory and don't just use some arbitrary number, because it becomes confusing when you have other people on the same mission and you say go to point A or point B, and then they don't know, well, is that factory 1 or is that factory 2? So it's best to just label it. If it's factory 3, you put in factory 3. If it's factory 4, put in 4. If it's 5, then you put in 5. Since you have to adjust for the altitude of the city, it's also best to include the altitude as well. So since there's only 10 character spaces available, you have to be creative with your abbreviations. Example, Ashford is 162 meters above sea level. If you go to Canterbury, it's 47 meters. If you go to Whitstable, which is up on the north coast, it is 46 meters above sea level, except for factory number 7, which is the very furthest one right down in the docks area. It's 7 meters above sea level. Example, I have 3 factories here at Canterbury, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to label them, and I can put the altitude for each of the factories, or for this city, in each of the labels. It'll look like this: English factory number 3, altitude 47 meters. But you can also set a waypoint, like rally point in blue, with the altitude of that particular town. Here I've sped up the film a little bit, and now we come up to factory number 7 at the north coast. And remember, it's only 7 meters above the sea level. So not only am I marking that, I will also put a separate altitude for this factory compared to the other 2 factories in the same town. By speeding up the film to get through this process, since it's an hour long, and I want you to be able to see the bombing and then the defense against enemy air on the way back. Breaking up different segments of the video into varying speeds so that you can see portions and then other portions which may be a little bit boring while you're waiting for the action to happen. So here we go. Make sure that you've selected the factory that you want to bomb and right click on it and make it active so that your arrow points to that factory. And then as you're going along the way, you can go back in and double check to make sure that you're still lined up on it. You can also zoom in on the map and make sure that that green arrow points directly to that mark on the ring around the airplane so that you're certain that you're in line. And once you are certain, make sure that you hit your autopilot so that it stays on that as much as possible. And then check it periodically. Same thing with the top of the bomb sight. You want to make sure that the arrows on the side of the bomb sight and the top center are all in exactly where they're supposed to be. Looks like we have a welcoming committee, so we're going to have to be careful. Make sure that the plane is all lined up, ready to go, so that if we have to fight them off, that the plane will basically fly to the target, if we have time. So we're going to be going from different positions around, make sure that we're all lined up, set our autopilot, go from position to position to keep our eyes open for this EA. And hopefully there's no more than one. So as we're looking around, oh look, right down there, right down between my feet and the rudder pedals. That's fortunate. Now, hopefully he didn't see us. So let's see if we can get a better look at him. Can't tell from this position, so let's get up front to the nose gunner, number 3. And he doesn't appear to be turning around. So he went down through the clouds and didn't see where I went. So that was very fortunate. So let's continue. Here in the bombardier's position, I'm checking my instruments for altitude and airspeed. I want to make sure that everything is set in the top left-hand side, that the altitude and airspeed match. You want to use indicated airspeed. I'm also checking around, looking for enemy air. Since I'm over enemy territory, I will not be able to see a lit grid. So I still have to check from time to time for enemy aircraft for interdiction. Once I'm sure that I'm clear, I will also double check the bomb sight again. And I have to, not only will I match the altitude, but I have to subtract the altitude of the city as well. So there will be some adjustments. If I'm going for Ashford, which I am, factory number 5, I have to subtract 162 meters from the altitude on the bomb site. When lining up the targets, I try to make sure that I fly through the direction of at least 1 or 2 factories at the same time. That way, if it looks like I'm going to miss one, I can hit the other. Here, I'm passing over factory 6, going for factory number 5 in the distance, and I'm about ready to drop the bombs. I'm going to try to drop the bombs just as I reach the outer edge of the wall, and then start dropping. Normally, I look through the bomb sight and follow the bombs all the way down to the target, but because I'm over the enemy territory at this moment, I have no escort. I need to be ready to shoot at any or defend myself. Now from 6K up, it takes quite a few seconds for those bombs to get down there. And I wasted quite a few seconds watching for it because I wanted to show you what it looked like. However, typically I should be looking out for enemy aircraft, and I should be getting ready to make my turn to head back to home. The bombs hit close enough and along the wall that it caused damage to the factory, so the mission was a success so far. Now we've got to try and turn around and head back for home. So let's do that right now. I get the plane turned around and try to head back towards the origin. And I try to keep my speed up as much as possible to get out of this area. Once I've gotten where I can out over the ocean and I can see if they are coming after me, then I start climbing to try and get some altitude to make it a little more difficult for them to get to me and to give me more time to line up on them. As soon as I got far enough away from England, the yellow grids began to show up where somebody's been chasing me. So we were playing a cat and mouse game. I'm not going very fast at all, but he has to search the grid, the entire grid, and looking for me. And whether, depending on what altitude he's at, he might see me, he might not. So I'm hoping that he doesn't see me. So I'm moving. I go into different grids. I'll fly into the northern grid and then try to fly a little horizontal or diagonally across the grid. And at the same time, I keep watching, checking to see, is he with me or is he getting close? Also, since there's a slight delay, he could be halfway across the grid before it even turns yellow. We'll continue to climb slowly, but continue to try and get as much altitude as I possibly could get to make it more difficult for him to get to me. And again, he's catching up, so now I have to really be careful. I have to spend half my time looking where I'm trying to go, and at the same time to get that altitude. Right here, I'm trying to get my autopilot to set that I can go back and use the gunner positions to look for this enemy. Since I don't know from which direction he'll be approaching, I'm trying to look from different positions to see where he might be. And lo and behold, I spot him. Now, I've got some problems. What do? I'm thinking, okay, I should start shooting right now, but then at the same time, I want him to think, well, that I'm not paying attention. I can see that he's slowing down, which means he's climbing hard, trying to get to me. And he's leveling off so he can gain some speed and he's going to come up to me. But at the same time, I think I made a mistake here. I actually should have been shooting already. Since his halo's red, that means he's within gun range. So I finally decide, okay, time to start shooting. And again, I should have been shooting the whole time. Also, I want to make sure that I use up the entire clip so that I'm not in the middle of a reload at some point where he's trying to get up to me. So I keep shooting and trying to lead him. He goes down, way down deep to try and get some speed. And at the same time, I depress the gun as far as I can get it. And I know he's going to be coming up at me, so I finish off that last couple little rounds. Okay, so here he comes. Now I'm going to let this whole thing just play out. I'm going to be quiet, and you can watch. I also brought the volume back up to where it would be normal. This is what I'd be listening to while I'm in the game. Include talking to myself, giving myself some encouragement. Felt like my gun was being a little slow on its movement, so I tried to up its speed a little bit. And of course, in the middle of that battle, it's not necessarily a good idea, and I actually overdid it a little bit. So now my gun is being a little too responsive. However, I managed to get a bead on him. This is the first time from the side that I've been able to get a bead on an enemy plane from the side and actually get some hits on him. Phew, boy. Finish off my clip so make sure that it's ready to go again just in case somebody else is in that grid. And then I go back to the pilot's position. I bring the volume back down a little bit so it's easier to hear again. And I decide, okay, I'm going to start diving. But at the same time, I know that if I go too fast, especially at this high altitude, I end up with a compression lock or whatever they call it on the control surfaces. And then I can't really control the plane, so I try to pull the power back a little bit, and the propellers keep them going, but hold the power back just a little too much. So as I'm diving, I've got a lot of air pressure against those propeller blades, and since I can't feather them, that extra pressure causes the engines to stall a little bit. So watch this. You can take a look, and sometimes it's hard to get them started again once you've done a compression stall on the engines. Of course, I'm close enough to the airfield that I could just glide it down there, and I used to fly gliders in real life, so we could give that a try too. And then I thought about the fact that you can show what it looks like to try and get these things started again. I have had engines where they because of the compression on them, the air compression, that they just wouldn't start until I got like almost down to the ground. Okay, so I showed that you can get them started sometimes, and as long as you have enough time to do it. And then I decided, okay, well, let's go ahead and do the compression stall again, and at the same time turn us into a glider and take her on down, have some fun. Thank you for watching this video on RDP bombing and defending yourself from interceptors. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, the game is supported by us who subscribe to it, so if you haven't, please subscribe, and thank you very much.